Well, the important thing is to realize when we get to a $7.6 trillion rollback of government, what we've done is just cut the government's budget by about 18%. That's a dramatic start. It's something necessary. In my plan, as I've presented it on the discretionary side of the budget, I begin with what some will consider severe cuts. I would totally eliminate the Department of Commerce, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Education, and the Department of Energy. With those four agencies eliminated, we've just reduced $1.8 trillion over the next 10 years. The big area, of course, 68% of all of our spending is in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and the Defense Department. Those areas, too, have to be seen as sites for reduction. What I've done with the Department of Defense is to take them back in 2013 to 2010 spending levels, and then slowly increase it about 0.5% every other year, which will result in more savings. The big area, of course, Social Security and Medicare. I start with this. Anyone who's today working over the age of 55 has been promised, I believe, through an essential social contract, what their benefits would be from the United States government for both Medicare and Social Security. I don't think those contract terms can be violated. I think we must honor those. But for younger working Americans, we have to set a new set of rules by age group, say those who are today 50 to 55 or 45 to 50. We have to let each of them know they have a different set of expectations. The contract is different. I think we need to raise the retirement age, certainly, and that has to be phased in. On the health care side, Medicare and Medicaid, we need to bring much more competition in the system. We need to get government price controls out of the system, which presently exists through Medicaid and Medicare. And in doing that, we need to allow doctors to increase their productivity. When we allow doctors to increase their productivity, just like the rest of working Americans, cost will go down. Competition will increase, and that will be a good thing. There's also just, even by the U.S. government's own estimate, as much as $50 to $70 billion a year waste in Medicaid. A couple of years ago, Bernie Madoff ripped off the system for $50 billion. It was in the news for weeks. And yet the U.S. government says we're losing $50 to $70 billion in Medicaid every year, and nobody ever talks about it. Nobody's going after it. That has to change. We are on the precipice here. The law of economics are as irrefutable, as irretractable as the law of gravity. Right now, we have a $15 trillion national debt that is ever growing. Governments have but two ways to pay off debt. They either increase taxes or they basically devalue currency by just printing more money. Even President Obama, to his credit, has said this would be a horrible time to be raising taxes because it would have negative effects on the economy and it would stop job growth. That's another way of saying wealth creation would be slowed down even further, and thus the government wouldn't be receiving taxes. So that means their other choice, as I said, is to print money. Here's what happens when governments go that route. This may look like funny money, it may look like monopoly money, but it's a note from the Federal Reserve Bank of the Bank of Zimbabwe dated 2008. And if you can read that on screen, that is a $100 trillion note. These are passed around on the streets in Zimbabwe. This is worth about $5.60 of U.S. currency. This is what happens when nations try to spend their way to prosperity. When they think they can just keep borrowing towards the future, at some point the debt comes due, and this is how it expresses itself. We cannot let this happen to the American economy.